On-call, marathons,
I'm just an advocate of daily exercise.
the doctor's orders, and how to improve your life.
Funding for this program is provided in part by
Avera is a proud sponsor of On Call on South Dakota Public Television.
and by the South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, the Medicare Quality Improvement Organization for South Dakota. Additional funding provided by Dakota Care, the Brookings Health System, Regional Health, the South Dakota American College of Physicians, and Swiftel Communications. Closed captioning for On Call is provided by the generous support of Avera, the Brookings Health System, and Fishback Financial Corporation.
There's the valve.
All of them together.
And which was healthier, the yogurt and the bagel?
All right, I'm going to start by measuring the size of it.
You could also add grilled chicken to this recipe.
Blow hard, blow, 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 keep pushing.
And try to take just your head.
Pull red handle to open bag.
Hello and welcome to On Call. I'm Tammy Watson. The topic of our show tonight is an idea that has kind of become a cliche: how to improve your life. Articles in magazines and on the web frequently have titles like 5 Simple Steps to Lose Weight and 3 Things You Can Do to Alleviate Pain. And whether or not this type of material provides you with useful information, it does indicate that there is an audience for information about how to change and grow and be healthier. So tonight it's On Call's turn to tackle the topic of how to improve your life. We're going to talk about exercise, and later on you'll hear about a study that uses antidepressant medications for a new purpose. And here in our studio live, ready to answer your questions and share their expertise on how to improve your life, are Dr. Thomas Braithwaite, Dr. Mary Helen Harris, and the On-Call medical editor, Dr. Rick Holm. As I said, they're standing by and ready to answer your questions. So remember, the phone number for you to call is 1-888-DOCTOR-ON-CALL. Again, that's 1-888-376-6225. And helping answer the phones tonight are volunteers from the Brookings Health System. Dr. Holm, before you introduce our guests, what do you expect the main thrust of the discussion to be tonight? We could go a lot of places with this.
You know, initially I was thinking, and of course one of my patients said to me today, "Oh, you always get in exercise. We're always waiting for it, and we laugh when we hear it. You're always talking about exercise." And the Brookings Marathon was coming up. And I've been trying to promote this walk a mile a day to keep the doctor away thing from the ACP. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to do a whole thing on exercise, but we're not going to say exercise because nobody likes to hear that. We're going to talk about how to make your life better, right? But the more I thought about it, the more I invited Braithwaite to be on the show because he's an exerciser, but he's also a cancer survivor. And I thought, gee, one of my favorite people is Mary Helen Harris, who is also a cancer survivor, and a person who you love to be with. She's happy. You walk in the room and you feel better when Mary Helen's there. I mean, these are people who glow mental health, happiness, life is good, and there's cancer survivors. Perhaps part of that is why. So we can go anywhere. And I think also 2 of the most spiritual people I know. And I'm thinking spirituality, I'm thinking exercise, I'm thinking the things that you should get at the doctor's office, wellness plans, preventive things. And so, I mean, I don't know. You out there in the audience, call in. What do you want to hear? We're going to babble on and on if you don't. There's lots of places we can go about how to improve your life.
Okay, well, there's a lot to talk about, and starting off...
Well, let me introduce our guests for this evening. Dr. Thomas Braithwaite, Medical Director with Sanford Clinic, hospitalist, and Dr. Mary Helen Harris, a specialist in emergency medicine from Sioux Falls. Welcome, the 2 of you.
Good to be here, Rick.
Thank you.
So I thought I might talk about how, and this is a dirty blow, I really didn't say much about it, but you don't mind, you both agreed to do this. You are a cancer survivor, both of you. Tom, tell us how it changed your life.
Well, how did it change my life? Well, I think it's that reminder that those of us in healthcare need, that we too are vulnerable. I think when you practice medicine and you've been in healthcare for 26 years like I have, you almost need at times to be able to put on a little bit of a wall of invulnerability. We deal with suffering every day. And so something in the back of your mind, some tape has to be playing that says, well, this certainly couldn't happen to me, but it can. So it is the ultimate reminder that we too, as caregivers, are human and vulnerable.
Yeah, we need to walk in.
It grounds you. It definitely grounds you, yeah.
We're walking in their moccasin. Mary Helen.
I agree, and I think it helps me sit in the chair with the patient, or wear the patient's shoes, I guess, knowing that they're sitting there nervous about what I'm going to tell them, wondering what I'm going to say, worrying, thinking the worst. And it's kind of given me the philosophy that I try never to poke a hole in my patient's boat without tossing them a life preserver along with it.
Wow. Well, and we can talk about, the life preservers that we need to toss. But we'll go to the questions. We need them, though. You need to call us. We'll talk about it right after this.
Heart disease, cancer, and stroke are the most common causes of death in the United States.
There are countless ways to improve your life, both physically and mentally. Spending the day at a racing event that includes a 26-mile marathon is one example. Whether you're a runner, a volunteer, or a spectator, there are benefits that come from being active in a community event that challenges the athletic spirit. To find out about this, On Call visited the Brookings, South Dakota Marathon, Half Marathon, and Relay Race, and On Call's Luke Cardona has the story.
Set, go! Each year, hundreds of people attend the Brookings Marathon for a day of fun and activity that brings runners, volunteers, and community members together. Matt Bean, the Brookings Marathon race director, knows the importance this event holds in the community.
I think it's part about being a good community member. It's just great to get out there. These runners come from all over the U.S. and just a great way to showcase the community and show off Brookings, but I think just giving back to the community is probably the main reason.
Community involvement and volunteerism is important on a day like this, and Bean has seen how the active lifestyle of runners impacts the volunteers.
I hear from a lot of volunteers, boy, I watched that for a couple of years, I'm going to try it next year. So I've seen a lot of people that have gotten involved in running just by being out there as a volunteer, so that's great to see too.
As a race volunteer, Lyle Olson also knows the benefits of spending the day at the marathon.
I have been trying to train for the Tour Dakota that's coming up, so I was going to ride a few miles today anyway, and I've never watched this marathon. Really, I've always had other things to do, so I thought today would be a good time to do both. I guess it improves my life physically, but also socially, just getting out of the house and being around people and being involved and interacting with individuals. It's just healthy physically, mentally, and socially also.
Many people are involved in the Brookings Marathon, either as a volunteer, a participant, or simply as a spectator cheering on participants. And each individual has his or her own reasons for being here, reasons which seem to revolve around the idea of improving quality of life. Holly Copeland ran in the Brookings Half Marathon, and she is no exception.
I take pride in the fact that I run daily, or 6 days a week. And I have a lot of friends that say, oh, I can't run, my knees are bad or whatever. And I'm just an advocate of daily exercise, whether it's a walk or weightlifting or kickboxing or whatever it is you do, that I just think your whole quality of life depends on whether you exercise every day or not.
Copeland knows that long-distance running isn't for everyone, but encourages people to put their best effort forward in return for a personal accomplishment.
People are like, oh, I won't finish, or I've never run a race, but there's all levels and all ages, and you don't have to be a superstar. It's all about you and just accomplishing something, even be it, if it's a small little step in your life, it's a big deal. That feeling of accomplishment that you strive for, that you may not get in your daily work, but you can get it, in your recreation time.
Copeland has run in the Brookings Marathon in the past and recommends it to anyone that is interested in marathon and relay races.
I would just recommend the Brookings race to anyone. I really would. It's just, you know, I've run big races in San Diego and Chicago. I've done the Boston Marathon. I've done everything out in the Black Hills. And, you know, it's just nice to come to, like I said, a small town where it's easy. You can park right there. My husband could watch me a couple times along the way. And sometimes that's better than the 40,000 people race.
Dr. Holm, do you want to follow up on this? You actually participated in the half marathon, right?
Yeah, I think for a 62-year-old person, I didn't do too bad. My wife won her age bracket.
Have you always run, or?
No, I mean, you think about it. I ran in track in high school, and I tried to play football, and I mean, you know, I was never great. I mean, I was from D. Smet. I did okay. We had a good football team. What a team. But and I didn't do anything in college, and then in med school I was overwhelmed and burdened and emotionally struggling with it, and started running, and everything cleared up. I mean, it was, and I can tell you, it's an emotional treatment. It's the most powerful emotional medicine there is. I truly believe that, better than what we have, and there's data to support me on that. Now, would you guys agree with that?
Well, of course, that's a passion you and I share, Rick. We've talked about it while we're running. While we're running, but you know, I don't know that the form of exercise that people choose is as important as the regularity. But I think when you do it, when you can develop a pattern of doing it, it does become sort of a almost sacred space in your day. And I know some people listen to music, they do lots of things, they do it. For most of the time, for me, I don't, you know, because it's sort of quiet and thoughtful time. But
women always feel like you're supposed to be doing something else. You should be cleaning, or you should be picking somebody up, or what. So what?
There are other things. I mean,
doctor's orders that I should take time to myself?
Doctor's orders, time for yourself. I mean, Mary Helen, what do you do?
Well, in terms of exercise, I'm not a runner at all. But a year and a half ago, I got a dog. And the dog, I miscalculated when I got the dog because he was really fluffy. And I thought he was bigger than he was, but I got him home, and he can get out between the uprights and my fence. So when the dog goes out, I go out. So
you go
several
out for a walk
times
twice,
a day.
Several times. Until you get in more than a mile.
Yes. Every day, rain, snow, blizzard, 30 below, too hot.
So
the dog and I are out there.
30 minutes a day of walking the dog.
Yes.
I think that's wonderful. I've had more people say, you know what, get a dog, then you get your exercise. If you walk your dog a half a mile twice a day, that's, you know, around the block 3 times a day, you've done a mile a day. That's all I'm asking. I'm thinking a mile a day is, you know, at least that really does keep things rolling.
Wonderful, and it's achievable. And I think a few years ago I was decided after running for 35 years I was going to run a marathon, and so many people who were non-runners, not even regular exercisers, said, well, that's a wonderful goal, you know, do you think I could do that? And I would really discourage people from setting lofty goals like that, because they become, you know, the risk of injury and other things. Unless it's something you've been doing in a sustained way for a long period of time, I wouldn't advise it. And what sets people back is they set the bar way too high. And the reality is we don't have to set the bar that high. Regularity with 30 to 45 minutes per day of even a brisk walk, as you were just mentioning, it's achievable. You can do it without injury. And unless people have other specific goals that they should work at gradually, that's a tremendous thing, I think.
Well, and really a mile is only 20 minutes. I mean, you can do a mile in 20 minutes. Easy. And that's, if you could just do it every day. You were going to say something, Mary Helen.
Oh, I was just going to say, as women, we multitask. So I pick up garbage in the neighborhood and listen to books and walk my dog at the same time.
This is good to remember. Or you could go out, as you said, with your dogs. You could go out with your kids. You could go walk over to the neighbors. Just various excuses, huh?
Various excuses. But I think if you think about it, the real reason to do it, one could say physical health. I mean, because as you get older, you lose mobility, and the first step to the graveyard or to losing your capacity to be independent is you're losing your mobility. So if you can keep your mobility, that's probably your most powerful quality of life extender, and that walking is it.
And to dovetail on that, since we are talking about quality of life, I think if you talk to anyone who does exercise regularly, they're going to tell you they feel so much better afterwards. And not only that endorphin effect that we get from exercise, but if you do it regularly, if it becomes habitual, it's what I would term a positive addiction. And when you're not doing it, you feel uptight, you feel on edge until you've gotten that in. So I think that almost pulls you along during times in South Dakota of bad weather, or you get busy, you get distracted, life takes its turns. So
I think starting with a mile a day is a fabulous idea. And that's I think there's solid data to say that it's as effective, if not more effective, than the fluoxetine, the sertraline, the SSRI antidepressants, the pain reliever antidepressants. I mean, we're over medicinized. Let's go the non-medicine way to treat depression, and that's how I treat my own depression.
This is a good time to segue into mental health and depression and medications and stuff. You're saying that exercise is proven. There's studies that show that it'll improve mental health.
Solid data.
Let's talk about medications now. That's an option in some situations too, right?
True, and you add the antidepressant medications to the exercise, it's double whammy. I mean, it really does pull people out. So, and I'm not against medication, particularly for depression. I think the medicines we have, inexpensive, very effective, very good medications, very helpful in a person who needs it. If exercise is not enough.
I can tell if I'm physically out of shape, but it's kind of hard to recognize sometimes if you're actually dealing with a mental illness, because your perceptions are skewed because it's your perceptions that are
skewed.
Unhealthy. Yeah. So how can a physician or how can an individual identify that?
Well, let's talk about mental health, because we're talking about a meaning of life, what makes life better. What in general, give us some clues about mental illness or mental health problems, mild and moderate and severe, and what we can do outside of exercise. We said enough about exercise. Let's talk about other things. Mary Helen.
Well, I don't really know that I'm an expert, and I think I'm blessed to be born kind of a happy person, so I'm going to.
I think that there are signs that we can discuss about depression, and these are usually things that where people have lost pleasure in things that are normally pleasurable. That's always sort of a telltale sign. Maybe alteration in sleep, maybe feelings of anxiety. And I think it's important that if individuals are wondering, could some of these symptoms I'm feeling, such as the loss of interest in eating, difficulty sleeping, anxiety, a loss of pleasure in work, and physical relationship with a partner, these things, if they're experiencing that, I think it's best that they talk with their doctor about it, because I think trying to sort out whether this is, as you said, minor or major, is really something they ought to do in concert with their physician. There are certainly forms of depression, particularly that are biologic, and we don't want to let anyone be led to think tonight that medication can't play a life-changing role in the management of depression. However, our point about some things with lifestyle that we can do. I was thinking as I was driving up here, we talk about the mind-body connection. We know that mental dis-ease can lead to physical dis-ease as well. But I think the counter is also true, and this has been shown, as Rick intimated, that physical exercise and improving our physical sense of well-being likewise can improve our sense of mental health as well. So we recognize that mind-body connection, and I think it works both ways.
Mary Helen.
I think there are other things too that you can do that aren't necessarily putting on your running shoes and going outside. There are things that you can do sitting down that are good for your mental health too. And I'm a knitter. I love knitting. And I've read studies that show that somebody who's knitting goes into EEG changes, brainwave changes that are similar to somebody who's meditating. Yeah. And so honestly, to me, if I don't get to knit every day a little bit, I would feel that as well. It's helpful. It helps me solve problems. By the time I get a pair of socks done, I've worked out something that I was
And I could
wondering
use
about.
an extra pair of socks.
Okay.
Oh, I want to bounce off this idea of meditation too. But before we do that, I wanted to add one more thing to your list of the things that gives you a clue that there's something wrong. And I think guys in particular, I think guys present with anger. And this can be women too. But in South Dakota, a guy isn't depressed. He's just mad all the time. What is it that causes a person to be mad? Why are they mad? Well, they're not mad, really. They're down. But guys will never say they're down. I mean, they don't want to say they're down. Some of them have the courage to do it. But classically, South Dakotans guys will avoid this area. And it's hard to make that diagnosis because they don't want, it's a guy thing, you know. Any comment about that?
Yeah, I think that's true, Rick. It's whether it's the stoicism that won't allow us to show the full breadth of emotion, and somehow anger is socially, if it's guided in the right way, can sometimes almost be socially acceptable, although as we certainly know, anger can be turned a lot of directions, and if it's turned inward, you know, anger turned inward is often another way of describing depression.
I've seen a lot of anger allayed, is that the right word, reduced by antidepressant medication. It's interesting, though, also pain is helped by antidepressants. I've seen so many people who've had chronic pain, and it's darndest thing. You know, maybe there's an underlying depression, or why is it that the SSRIs help people with pain sometimes? Now, let's talk about meditation. You were talking about the meditation response of knitting. How do you sense religion, or let's not even say religion, let's say spirituality in this world helps people through into wellness? Is that a real deal? Is that, you know, come on. Mary Helen.
Well, I think just for me, there are some places that you can be that are beautiful and relaxing and calming. It might be outside. It might be in a quiet building. It might be in a comfortable, familiar place. I think that there are places that are what some philosophers would call thin spaces where you get in touch with the divine. And everybody finds that in a different way. You know, it might be listening to music. It might be actually, you know, making music. It might be, you know, reading a good book, or having read a good book, sit and thinking about it.
Well, are there scientific studies in med school that talk about these issues? That any ones that?
Oh. Yeah, there have been. It's just a difficult issue to look at with the scientific model. There have been studies that have shown that prayer does lead to improved outcomes in hospitalizations. But to control for all those other variables in the way we like to do, in a what we would call pure science, it's very difficult to construct. Certainly in my own practice, and although it would be deemed anecdotal, I've certainly seen that in people who I would call are balanced in the physical, emotional health, spiritual health realms, their approach, how they handle, how they deal with illness is quite different. And no question in my mind it has helped them through crises, and I can speak to that myself as well. But you know, the science, I think, is sort of in an infancy state because it's very difficult to construct the type of scientific studies of such questions.
But the great story of the relaxation response by Herbert Benson, a Harvard guy who showed that he was thinking meditation response. These people, the transcendental meditators are saying, oh, we lower blood pressure. And he went, well, I got to see this. He studied that, and then he subsequently studied all the religions in the world and all the ways they meditate, and then he put it in a non-religious meditation method that was fairly quick, and they worked on it, and he proved with numbers blood pressures went down. And the component of the meditation was that you let go of responsibility in a quiet room by yourself, not where you'll fall asleep, but where you can sit and relax. Let go of responsibility to one, you know, maybe one, or love, or, you know, whatever mantra you want to think and let go of it for a period of time. He used to say a half an hour, now he's saying 30 seconds. You've looked at the Herbert Benson relaxation response, and it gives real scientific support for meditation of all sorts. And it doesn't pick a religion. It just says that there's something very spiritual, physical connection.
Okay. I thought this next question was going to follow right up into meditation, but it's a little back more to exercise, but it's talking about working in the garden, which is, for some of us, a very good kind of break from the stress. Anyway, caller from Selby, age 75, does working in the garden for the next 3.5 months take the place of walking a half mile a day? I do bending, weeding, hoeing, carrying water.
I give it an A+.
Plus also looking at joint mobility and flexibility and lots of good things to be said about gardening. Whether you get the same aerobic benefit, a little harder to say, but I think its positive health benefits would be on a par with other things with walking or the like, I think.
Plus you're creating something beautiful if you're raising flowers or vegetables.
Vegetables
that are good for your health.
There you go. You're creating.
Can't go wrong with that.
Or you're aiding Mother Nature to do the creation. Although I have to tell you that at our house we're trying to put garbage back into the garden. Okay, so we're just beginners in composting, right? So you could look at that stuff that we put in the garden this spring, and now up comes from that compost. It's really quite an amazing thing.
Well, we're going to keep moving on here. Now, one issue that needs to be addressed when you think about ways to improve your life is deciding if something bothers you, whether or not it's something that can be changed or something you just have to accept and live with. And for some women, the symptoms of menopause fit into this category. Do you live with them or treat them? Our next story is going to touch on this topic. Menopausal hot flashes are often treated with hormonal therapy, but recent studies show these reproductive hormones are related to certain health risks. Right now, there's no other FDA-approved treatment for hot flashes, which affect millions of otherwise healthy menopausal women. A new study shows an antidepressant medication may help reduce the frequency and severity of hot flashes. Catherine Dolph explains in this week's JAMA report.
Talk to most menopausal women, and they can explain in great detail what it feels like to experience a hot flash.
All of a sudden, someone lit an incinerator at my feet that would go up toward the top of my head.
Like someone struck a match and put it at the top of my head, and it slowly went down my body.
Loretta Johnson and Barbara Urian say they elected to pass on hormone therapy because of the risks, and nothing else seemed to really help.
People are looking for options to the hormones. So we were interested in looking at another medical treatment.
It's called escitalopram, an antidepressant medication. Dr. Ellen Freeman from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine and co-authors conducted a multi-center randomized controlled trial with healthy menopausal women whose only major complaint was severe hot flashes. Over 8 weeks, half received the medication and the other half took a placebo. Each woman also kept track of their hot flashes in a daily diary.
Hot flash frequency decreased significantly in the women who took the escitalopram.
The study appears in JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association.
When the women stopped taking their medication, the women in the escitalopram group experienced a very rapid return of their hot flashes.
Barbara and Loretta knew almost immediately that they received the medication and say it helped them.
Would you say that you would continue this medication?
I'm definitely going to stay on it, as long as I can, because it really helps.
Everything in my life was better. Just the fact that I could get up in the morning and not feel like I had been going 12 rounds all night did quite a bit for my how pleasant I was in the morning.
Researchers also say the medication was well tolerated by the women who took it. Catherine Dolph, the JAMA Report.
Each year, an estimated 443,000 people die prematurely from smoking or exposure to secondhand smoke.
Thank you for joining us tonight. We're talking about how to improve your life. And here in the studio, ready to answer your questions, are Dr. Thomas Braithwaite, Dr. Mary Helen Harris, and the on-call medical editor, Dr. Rick Holm. Our phone lines are open, and you can call in right now with your questions. Our phone number is 1-888 376-6225. Now, before we get back to our questions, just a quick note about the last story.
Yeah.
They did report that there was some placebo response in the results of this. So explain the placebo effect.
Before we go any further, I have to say that S-citalopram is pretty much like citalopram, is pretty much like fluoxetine, is pretty much like bupropion. It's pretty much like, if you can go down through those lists, the data shows they all seem to work equally well, and pretty well. And S-citalopram is more expensive than citalopram. So I generally use citalopram. Not to say S-citalopram doesn't work well. Those are those SSRIs we talked about that are helpful for people who are depressed. But it also works for
pain, you said.
Pain. It also works for anger. It also works for menopausal symptoms. How about that? But is it a placebo effect? And my answer is, let's talk about placebo effect.
Well, define it first.
Mary Helen.
Just the basics of what placebo effect is.
A placebo is a pill that has no active ingredients in it that makes you feel better anyway.
And that can actually happen if I think I'm going to
If you think it's an active ingredient.
It absolutely can help in a certain number of people.
Okay.
Tom?
And the way we try to sort that out in medicine is by, and one of the ways we advance science, we talked a little bit about the scientific method. One of the ways we advance science is by trying to sort out what is a positive effect from the medication, and what is a positive effect from the perception that you are receiving a helpful medication, or not, that would be another definition of the placebo effect. So if you're looking at a drug, at a medication, you're comparing people who are getting true medication to people who are getting a sham medication or a placebo. And that placebo effect can be anywhere from 25 to even 50% benefit compared to baseline in certain studies, depending upon what it is you're looking at.
Yeah, let me just give an example and then get back to you. The example was a episiotomy pain. They used to do episiotomies a lot, which is when the baby's coming down the canal, they would cut open the vaginal opening to make it easier for the baby to come out. Now, we don't do that anymore. We let it stretch, and it's probably wiser that we don't. But everybody would get that same cut, and then you'd sew it up. And so post-baby episiotomy pain was pretty standard. All these women had this episiotomy, and so they tried different pain medicines, narcotic, different, codeine, Tylenol with codeine, a variety of different things, placebo. And the answer was a placebo in this study that I remember seeing many times was 60% effective, and that all the rest of them were like 65, 70% effective. I mean, not that far from placebo. And faith of medicine is a huge thing. And what's more, they found that they could reverse the placebo effect with narcotic reversing agent. They could turn, you could reverse narcotics. You can wake people up who are in a narcotic coma with a reversing agent. You will also take away the pain relief from the placebo effect with a narcotic reversing agent. In other words, placebo effect is real.
Oh, that's
so go on, I'm sorry.
No, I think that, and we don't always understand the mechanism of placebo effect, but it's a way that we try to ascertain that any proposed treatment that we would prescribe or that we would study it's a way of measuring its true impact, its true benefit.
Okay.
Right, the difference between the placebo effect and the real effect from this pain medicine, for example. And that's what confounds this whole thing of science, because, well, it worked, doesn't matter. I remember a friend of mine, it worked, doesn't matter if it was, that's what mattered. The bottom line is it worked. No, the bottom line is...
Whether it worked or whether I thought it worked as a patient.
Right.
Okay. I'm going to dive into our phone calls again. We have a caller from Mobridge dealing with depression since her husband died. She's been on Cymbalta for 3 years. I think that's Cymbalta. Doesn't seem to help. Still has loss of interest, no energy. Would Abreva help or be better?
I don't know what Abreva is. Do you?
I'm not familiar with that. I don't know if the caller or the person who called in the question here kind of raises the question of maybe a difference between the normal grieving response and depression. And there really is a difference. It's normal. It's healthy. It's appropriate.
How long does grieving take?
6 months, I think, is normally considered a fairly average time for grief. But if it goes on longer than that, and I don't know if what she was referring to, if this has been 3 years that this has been going on, certainly that would suggest that there's more at play than just the normal adjustment, the mood disorder that comes from grieving. So I wouldn't want to suggest any specific drug, but if she's still suffering symptoms, she should be talking with her physician or her psychiatrist, whoever's helping her deal with that.
There's different kinds of antidepressants, different...
Right, and you know what, when one doesn't work, I switch to another. So I think switching is one thing. I would also say a walking program is another thing. And I would also say if there is significant risk, you can also, one thing underutilized is in severe depression using shock therapy. The other side of it is counseling, just counseling, having somebody that you can counsel with. Mary Helen, I'm interrupting you. You had a...
No, I was just also going to say something that's cheap, easy to do is journaling. And I think I've become very interested recently in the therapeutic effect of reflective writing.
Really?
Yes.
That's actually been proven to make a difference.
Absolutely. And so, you know, get a journal and write in it 30 minutes every day. Just whatever comes into your mind. It doesn't have to be anything that anybody's ever going to read again. But there have been studies that show that when you're journaling, you never go to a dark place that you're unable to handle. But you always go to a place where you're ready to do some work. So
I can ask you, Mary Helen, did you, when you were going through your cancer journey, did you journal?
I did.
You did?
I journaled 3 times during big things in my life. Cancer was one of them.
Cancer was one.
And I don't even need to read them again. It worked. It helped me.
Oh, but you could write that book, you know, eventually.
No, I'm not going to write that book.
No,
sorry.
Wow. You were talking about ways that you coped when you were dealing with your cancer treatment.
Well, and certainly I resonate with that because although I did not journal, during I've really suffered through 3 distinct treatment bouts with my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. During the first 2, I kept up an email, it wasn't a blog, but
it was poetry. For God's sake, it was the most beautiful written thing I've ever read.
But it was really, people would ask me if I was journaling, and in essence, I was, because every few days to maybe once a week, I would communicate with the people I love, my family, my dearest friends, of what I was going through. But it was always more than, this is what my white count was, this is what the drugs they just gave me, although it played that role too, but it was also helping me process that. And then during my stem cell transplant last summer, we took the step of forming a caring bridge, and that was a two-way street, because not only was I expressing what was going on, but you get this incredible flood of support.
Some of us know what Caring Bridge is, but for the rest of us,
Caring Bridge is caringbridge.org is a wonderful a website. It's a company that created it, and it is a place where people going through major illness can set up their own, what is in essence a blog, or set up your own website where you can make postings, or if you're too ill, sometimes when I was in a place where I just couldn't do it, a family member would do this, but you can put postings on that, and you can have pictures and the like, and also others can then communicate in what's called a guest book, and it's particularly when you're away in a distant location for treatment, or if you can't, so many people care, but you just can't keep connection with that number of people. It is a marvelous tool for feeling connected and supported. And again, for me, I think it also had that benefit of being able to express myself, what was transpiring.
Well, I was amazed at, I'd read your messages, and your spiritual connectedness to not only your friends and your family, but to your religion, or maybe your spirit, or the spirit of nature. I mean, I thought it was very remarkable of your connectedness. And I guess that brings me to that other point. Don't you think that that's one of the most powerful indicators of a person's wellness? We're talking about how do you make from whence comes wellness, is that connectedness. Not necessarily connectedness just to your friends, but connectedness to the world, the nature, the birds, the trees, your country, connected. I mean, I've seen people die alone in a black hole, and yet I've seen other people die with. I mean, I feel them now. They left themselves with me as they left the spirit. I mean, you sense it. Response.
Yeah, Glenn wanted to follow up.
Well, I just speak for myself. I mean, my cancer journey has been an intensely spiritual experience, and I think those that have seen what I've written or talked about through that process would know that. But it was something that helped me feel whole when physically you're anything but. I can relate one particular experience. Before I had my stem cell transplant, there was a small church near where I was being cared for that had an oil anointing service. My wife and I decided to go over, and I remember the priest who was leading this made the comment about the anointing with oil. And it was done.
Catholic priest?
It was actually Episcopal. I'm Presbyterian, but
who's counting?
But he said something that I thought was so meaningful to me, because the sign of the anointing of oil is of love and care, and to me this was a sign of God's love and care for me as I went through this. And he made the statement that when we anoint with oil, you cannot rub the oil off, you can only rub it in. And that image was something that was very sustaining to me during some very, very difficult days. And I believe, when I was, at the lowest point, I would reflect back on that. And to me, was extraordinarily helpful and meaningful.
Yes.
Very Helen.
I'm not going to...
You're going to interrupt.
Yeah, I'm going to ruin the segue, talk about something completely different. Caller from Mitchell, how do you convince a 20-something-year-old boy to take his depression medication even though it makes him feel like a zombie? So it's hard. Medication comes with side effects, and...
Well, that's a tough issue. I think about that movie with Jack Nicholson, who had obsessive-compulsive disorder. And he was definitly mentally ill. You could see that in the movie. What is the name of it? Do you remember?
Good as It Gets.
Good as It Gets. And I remember a scene where he said to her, "You make me want to be better and to take my medicine. I care enough about you that I need to be better enough to take my medicine." And it was a beautiful comment. I mean, I don't know how did you see that movie, Mary Helen?
I loved it, yeah, wonderful movie.
What a great story. I mean, and the beauty of this man, even though he was mentally ill, that's the other part of it. You see all these people that we take care of who are in various worlds, and some of them very mentally ill, some of them very, very sick, some of them very, very old, some of them very, very disabled. And you sense the beauty in them. And if you feel that, they feel you're feeling it.
I got to pick on you, though. Coming back to this, when there's a medication that...
Tom had
I was just going to make one pragmatic suggestion here.
Okay.
That is that one of the beauties of some of the newer antidepressants is that the side effects, they're not a whole lot more effective than what we used to treat depression 20, 30, 40 years ago. But what is so different about them is that their side effect profile is so much better. And I would encourage this mother and her son to be talking with whoever's providing medications and work collaboratively there, because if side effects are in the way of treatment, then I think they're not knowing any other specifics about things they've tried. Oftentimes there's other things that could be tried if the treating physician simply knows that there's a problem, there's a disconnect here, there's a stumbling block. But oftentimes I have found that people will have a side effect, you don't hear back about it, and you have no opportunity to address. And I don't know if that has occurred in this situation, but just encourage further conversation with their treating physician, because there may be a program that would minimize or even potentially eliminate those troublesome side effects.
There's different side effects with each of these different SSRIs. If this guy's tired with this one. This one doesn't give tiredness, it gives them energy. This one works in a different way. This one works, you know, so try different, but you got to tell the doctor. Mary Helen, you were going to say.
No, I agree.
Okay, a question from Pierre, and it's going back to the segment we had on menopause and hot flashes. They just want to know, is clonidine a medication to use for hot flashes, or what kind of medication is it?
It's not clonazepam, it's clonidine, which is an old antihypertensive medicine that makes you a little bit drier, and I've not seen it used with hot flashes, but I bet it could be. What do you know?
I've heard of it used with hot flashes. It's used for certain sort of, it can be used in drug withdrawal too. So I could speculate why it might be helpful. It is prone to significant side effects. Dr. Holm mentioned dry mouth, lightheadedness, dizziness, particularly when you're going from lying to standing. Have to be very careful about stopping it, because if you've been taking it and then were to stop it, there's some risks with that too. Sometimes blood pressure can rebound. So I have not personally used it in that fashion, but I could speculate as to why it might be helpful.
There's a bunch of menopausal drugs that that you could try. I mean, you're a girl. You know anything more in this, Mary Helen?
No, it's really not my area of expertise. There are lots of things.
Well, this touches on the
herbal things that people try to, black cohosh and certain kinds of tea and
getting older.
Soy.
And
exercise.
The things that, you know, as we get older and things don't work like they used to, how much of that do you have to just, I'm getting older, and accept, and when should you be doctoring on it to try to improve it?
I think it depends on how much is it really interfering with life. And even though hormone replacement therapy has very significant and defined risks, I think for short periods of time, if certain women are having utterly disabling symptoms, perimenopausal symptoms, it could be entirely appropriate to consider short-term use of hormone replacement therapy. So I think there has to be some sort of gauge put on, some sort of meter as to how much is this annoying, is this life disabling?
And the risk is so minimal, really. If you look at it, it's been way blown out of proportion. It's like 28 in 10,000 versus 36 in 10,000. I mean, you know, am I wrong? Those numbers are not huge. That the hormonal replacement brings a little bit of an increased risk in cancer. So it's been overplayed, and there might be like you say, a time to use it.
I think, yeah, particularly if it's just really, really. If a person is unable to function, then I think you really need to think about that. Yeah.
Okay. I hate to do this to you. We've got like 0 time left. We've got to do the wrap up. A caller from Brookings, female caller, age 74, has spots on her face. They're not healing, and she's worried they're cancer. What should she do about it?
See the doctor. Yeah.
Go see the doctor.
Go in.
Okay.
Get looked at.
Got a minute apiece. What final parting words do you want to share with the audience?
Well, it's been fun to kind of talk about things other than just purely the science of medicine. But you know, in our culture, we like to divide up our brains, our bodies, and our spirits. And I hope tonight we've talked a little bit about some of the ways that those connect, and that they're all fused. And balance in life is key. Balance is very important.
Dr. Harris?
I guess I would say the same thing. Different things work for different people. Find what fills up your cup and then do it every day.
Yeah.
Dr. Holm.
How much time do we have, Tammy?
Enough time for you to
say
what you want, and then I'll move on.
I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that they should get on the internet and go to healthysd.gov, healthysd.gov, sign up, put your name down, and then you go to a site that it says, you know, your name and your company. If there's a company or an organization, put the ACP down. Now we're competing against the AAFP, and so I want you to put ACP, which means American College of Physicians, but or you can put AAFP if your physician is a family physician, and we're trying to compete against those grades. Or if it's a chiropractor, right? Chiropractor. Put the organization down and sign up. We're doing a competition. See, we got another 3 weeks before it closes, so go there.
Competition for what?
Who can encourage exercise enough? So,
okay.
Thank you both so much for being here, Rick.
Doctors, again, thanks so much. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with the homespun perspective and then what's new in medical science.
Looking for reliable healthcare information online? You can start with the resources link at the OnCall website. From there, you can access a variety of accurate and dependable information sources, including the South Dakota State Department of Health and Medline Plus.
Listening to a news story about tornadoes the other day, I heard an interview with one man who was moaning about his losses. I could understand how he might feel abused by Mother Nature, but when he said, "Everyone knows that bad luck follows me and my family, and that's why the tornado found our house," it sent a cold chill up my spine. I believe any guy who thinks he's doomed to failure, expecting a dreadful fate of bad luck all the rest of his life, will have just that. In a similar vein, there are ancient plays, classic and modern works of literature that illustrate how believing in a curse gives it power. It seems a tragic human flaw that believing terrible things are going to happen can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The good news in all this is that the opposite can also be true. How many of us know of someone who has been successful, at least in part, because that person thinks good things are going to happen? It's no surprise much of what happens to us is determined by our attitude. Just go to the library and read about The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, or How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey to understand the power of an optimistic outlook. This is not to say that thinking positively will prevent the calamities of life or that grumps can't be successful. Nor am I advising putting on a false happy face when we have real reasons to be sad or discouraged. There is a time to bemoan our outcast state, as Shakespeare would say. Rather, I am suggesting that in contending with the certain disparities of nature and living, we should know the terrible consequences of negative thinking. Realize that "I think I can't" stops us dead in the water. And "I think I can" helps ease the burden of chugging up that hill. We would all do better not to expect the worst, but instead to believe in ourselves and hope for the best. We'll be right back.
In our medical news tonight, I'm not sure if this next story is a good excuse for having to move up a dress size or a sad realization of the inevitable, but a new study has shown that human pelvic bones continue to grow wider as we age. Scientists at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill looked into this subject because they say it has long been assumed that our bones stop growing once we reach maturity at around age 20. Researchers also say that it has been generally thought that getting thicker in the middle as we get older was related to simple weight gain and not skeletal growth. Scientists researching another topic, bursitis, noticed evidence of pelvic widening over time, so they decided to look into it in more detail. They did CT scans on 246 randomly selected patients ranging in age from 20 to 79 years old. What the researchers found out was evidence that indicates that the width, but not the height, of pelvic bones continues to increase throughout adulthood. The pelvic width of the oldest patients in the study was almost an inch larger than that of the youngest patients, and researchers say this inch increase in bone width could turn out to equal about a 3-inch increase in waist size. Well, as they say regarding getting older, it beats the alternative. And on that note, we're just about out of time. Remember, On Call is rebroadcast on SDPB Digital Channel 2, Mondays at 11 a.m. Central and Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Central. Once more, I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Thomas Braithwaite, Dr. Mary Helen Harris, and our On-Call medical editor, Dr. Rick Holm. Thanks to our phone volunteers, and thanks to you for watching and calling in. Remember to tune in next week. We're going to talk about disaster prep in South Dakota. Well, our guests are going to be Mr. Bill Chelcraft and Dr. Matt Owens. And in light of the tornado drama and impact down in the southern parts of the United States, it's going to be a very timely discussion, don't you think? All right. Well, again, thanks for watching tonight, and have a good evening.
Funding for this program is provided in part by
Avera is a proud sponsor of On Call on South Dakota Public Television.
And by the South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, the Medicare Quality Improvement Organization for South Dakota. Additional funding provided by Dakota Care, the Brookings Health System, Regional Health, the South Dakota American College of Physicians, and Swiftel Communications. Closed captioning for On Call is provided by the generous support of Avera, the Brookings Health System, and Fishback Financial Corporation.
To learn more about life and health, you can order your copy of The Picture of Health, a beautiful book containing insightful essays and evocative images by on-call medical editor Dr. Rick Holm and Dr. Judith Peterson. This book, containing healthcare advice, stories of medical history, and meditations on healing, can now be yours for $17 at the South Dakota Ag Heritage Museum. Call 1-877-227-0015 to order. This offer is made by Ag Bio Communications at South Dakota State University.